Each week at this time, we have what we call a community moment, where someone from the Oasis community shares a thought for the day. And it can be kind of any kind of topic, an idea from a book you've read, a movie you saw, something you want to teach the crowd. We've had all kinds of really creative and great community moments. Today, our presenter is a first-time community moment presenter. And I'll let you, I guess I was going to give you this big introduction about being a doctoral person at University of Arizona and all that, but Amanda Schutz, come on up. Let's give her a warm welcome. Yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, that should warm up here in a second. All right, so I've been attending Oasis events here for a while. Maybe you've seen me around. Like Mike had mentioned, I am a PhD candidate in sociology at the University of Arizona. And I moved to Houston about 4 months ago to start research for my dissertation on non-believers and non-religious communities. And I've talked to a lot of you here about my specific research interests and why Houston, and I'd love to talk more about that with anyone who's interested in hearing about the project or participating in it. So please catch me during the break or at lunch if you'd be interested in being interviewed for that project. But for today's community moment, I couldn't decide if I wanted to talk about my role as a sociologist or my journey to free thought. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I really can't talk about one without referencing the other, so I'm going to talk a little bit about both. And I have spent quite a bit of time, really over the past several years, talking to people about their stories, leaving the faith and becoming non-religious. Oh, great. So it's really nice to be here and be able to share my own story. So I was raised in a small, conservative, Protestant Christian town in northwest Indiana. And this is seriously the most interesting photo I could find of my hometown. You Google DeMott, and it's just a lot of pictures of churches and food. So it's very Midwest. I attended Methodist, Dutch Reform, non-denominational churches throughout childhood and adolescence, and the whole 9 yards, multiple Sunday services, Sunday school, Wednesday night youth group, vacation Bible school. I even attended a Christian school my freshman year of high school. And for a number of reasons, stopped attending services regularly later in high school, but I still retain pretty much all of the beliefs that I had been raised with since before I can remember until around my junior year of college. So I don't know if any of you have noticed, but it is shockingly easy for some people to ignore scientific and empirical evidence that in any way contradicts the beliefs that you've already decided you're going to have. And I can't rationally explain why it's so easy to do this, but it is. And I do still have a great deal of empathy for people who continue to object to things like evolution and climate change, same-sex marriage and reproductive rights for religious reasons. Ooh. Anyway, so one of the techniques that allows you to disregard evidence that contradicts your beliefs is to avoid coming into contact with said information completely. So I'll give you an example. I started undergrad as a communication major And by the time junior year rolled around, I was running out of electives that I really wanted to take. So I had to start looking at courses that I didn't really want to take and had to try to decide which would be the least painful to sit through. And I saw that one of the available options was physical anthropology, which according to the course description would involve a lengthy discussion of human evolution. So I decided to take a sociology course instead. I'll be coming back to this here later. So for those of you who don't know, and I'm pulling directly from my lecture notes here, sociology can be defined as the scientific, systematic study of society and group behavior. Social research is relevant to social theory. It incorporates significant amounts of appropriate evidence that is purposefully collected, and its conclusions are based on some form of systematic analysis of the entire body of relevant evidence. So simple enough, but I didn't know what sociology was when I took my first course. Now, this is an incredibly broad field of study. So wherever human interaction occurs, you're going to have sociologists there to study it, to describe it, and attempt to understand it. And this includes how we use symbols and language to communicate, how power and resources are distributed among groups of people, usually unequally, how class, social class, affects interaction and behavior, how race affects interaction and behavior, how gender affects interaction and behavior, how social institutions like the family, systems of education, the economy, mass media, and religion help a society meet its basic needs, and how many of these things are socially constructed. Symbols are socially constructed. Race is socially constructed. Gender roles are socially constructed. And religion is socially constructed. And while reducing everything down to this idea of social constructionism is overly simplistic, the idea that these things don't exist because they're inherently real or true, but rather because a large enough group of people have come to agree that they're real or true, to me was figuratively mind-blowing. Religion is socially constructed. One of the first sociologists, Emile Durkheim, wrote that religion was nothing more and nothing less than a society worshiping itself. It's a manifestation of whatever a society happens to find important or valuable. So God didn't create man, man created God. And I'm not sure if I accepted all of these pronouncements right away, but in Sociology 101, I was presented with a fact that I couldn't ignore and couldn't forget, which is that virtually every single culture that has ever existed on this planet has a religion. Many of them are developed independently of one another. Many of them have some pretty significant themes in common, and many groups believing that their religion is the one true religion and that all of the others are wrong. And for the first time, it dawned on me that the only reason I followed the religion that I did was because I was socialized to do so at a very young age and encouraged to continue into adulthood. So had I been born into a different family, in a different country, I probably would have been socialized into a different religion and believed it with equal intensity. So I came to suspect that I really didn't have a good reason for believing that my religion was the right religion, and that those people who believed in other religions just as strongly as I believed in mine were wrong. And of course, I'd always known that other religions and other ways of thinking had always existed, but in my small, 99% white, 99% Protestant Indiana town, I'd never actually met anyone whose beliefs differed significantly from my own, unless you count the Catholics. No one's really sure what the Catholics believed. But in my sociology courses, I was forced to confront this very basic social fact. So I decided to add a major in sociology to my degree in communications. And ironically, Oh. That's not right. I'm missing a slide. Anyway, ironically, one of the course requirements for majoring in sociology was to take physical anthropology. So remember the course I mentioned earlier that I didn't want to take because I'd actually have to, learn what evolution was? So God may not exist, but maybe there is poetic justice in the universe. So after taking this course and then reading this book, Richard Dawkins' The Greatest Show on Earth, which was the book about evolution that he published after The God Delusion, I actually learned what evolution was. And I don't claim to be any sort of lay expert in evolutionary theory, but as an introduction to evolution, I found the book to be very interesting and enlightening, and for the most part, pretty easy to follow. And I learned enough to comfortably reach the conclusion that the biblical story of creationism was not true. And I felt betrayed and lied to, and maybe not purposefully. I think the people who had told me that God created the earth in 6 days genuinely believed that to be the truth. But I felt as though this illusion had been shattered. And if the biblical story of creationism wasn't true, then how could I go on believing in all of these other fantastical stories of the Bible, like the flood, the virgin birth, the resurrection? And if you can no longer believe that Jesus was God incarnate who died for your sins and rose from the dead 3 days later, I don't think you can continue calling yourself a Christian. So between finishing college and beginning my graduate studies in sociology at the University of Arizona, I went through this very gradual transformation from fundamentalist Christian to progressive Christian to spiritual but not religious to agnostic, and then finally, and a little reluctantly, to atheist. And my personal non-religious identity, as that became solidified, I became more interested in learning about non-believers as a social group, and a group that was becoming increasingly actualized and well-organized. All right, good, that's still there. All right, so I'll wrap up by saying that I think sociology gets a lot of flack for being this soft, fluffy science that maybe isn't really even a science at all. So you see the sociologist all the way there on the left, the least pure of the sciences. And while I think some of this criticism might be warranted, I would also encourage everyone to think about the social sciences as a vital part of a well-rounded science education. So some of you might be in college now. You might have kids that are in college. You might have kids that someday will be in college. And I'm sure that you're all going to encourage them to take an interest in science. Maybe in physics or astronomy or biology, chemistry. But I hope that you also encourage them to take courses in sociology or anthropology or social psychology. Maybe not major in it, but at least take a few courses and become familiar with it, because I think it does provide an invaluable perspective on really complex human behavior. So thank you.